In a single week, the world said goodbye to voices, visionaries, and storytellers who shaped how we build, how we think, and how we feel. Their talents stood at the intersection of art and humanity, leaving behind legacies that reached far beyond their fields. Tonight, we pause to honor them. We remember the architect who bent steel into poetry, the playwright who rewrote the language of the stage, the novelist who gave a forgotten region its soul, and the golfer who competed with humility and joy. The quiet reminder that greatness is measured not only by what we create, but by how we touch the world while doing it. Frank Gehry, the man who reshaped skylines and turned steel into poetry, passed away on December 5, 2025. His departure closed the final chapter of a life spent pushing the boundaries of what buildings could be, and what human imagination could create. For many, it felt like losing a guide who showed the world how to look at structures not as walls, but as living forms. Frank Gehry was known for making the impossible seem gentle. His buildings rarely stood still. They twisted, curved, folded, and shimmered in ways that made passers-by look twice. Some said they looked alive, moving even when the wind was perfectly still. From the titanium waves of the Guggenheim Bilbao to the flowing shapes of the Walt Disney Concert Hall, Gehry's work carried a kind of quiet rebellion. He refused to accept that a building had to be a simple box. Instead, he believed it could be something deeper, something emotional, something that carried the spirit of the people who walked inside it. In the hours after the news of his passing spread, messages began to pour in from around the world. One architect wrote, "He showed us that rules aren't meant to trap us, they're meant to inspire us." A family friend shared a softer memory. Frank never talked loudly about being a genius, he just worked with the joy of a child building something beautiful. Even on social media, younger designers, many of whom had studied his projects for years, left simple messages of thanks. One post read, "You helped me dream bigger. You made me believe a building could smile." Frank Gehry's story began far from the grand museums and concert halls he later designed. Born in 1929 in Toronto, he grew up in a modest family that never imagined their quiet boy would one day change the world of architecture. As a child, he often played with scraps of wood and metal in his grandparents' store, arranging them into tiny shapes that he imagined were small cities, what others saw as leftover pieces. He saw his beginnings. When he moved to Los Angeles as a young man, he brought with him a restless curiosity. He studied architecture, but he also questioned it. Why did buildings all look the same? Why did they feel so predictable? Why couldn't they carry emotion? These questions stayed with him for decades, guiding his hands as he drew, revised, and sculpted new ideas. His early work was unconventional, even strange to some. But Gehry understood that good design came from patience. He worked step by step, often shaping ideas with paper models before turning them into towering structures of steel and glass. One of his earliest statements was his own house in Santa Monica. Instead of hiding behind polished finishes, Gehry exposed raw wood, metal sheets, and unexpected angles. The house looked unfinished to many, but to him it showed honesty and open view of how creativity worked. Neighbors were confused. Visitors were fascinated. That little house became a symbol of his courage, a preview of the daring mind that would soon capture the attention of the entire world. The turning point in his career came in 1997, with the opening of the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain. Nothing about that building felt ordinary. Its surface curved like a ship in motion, wrapped in shimmering titanium that caught the light in unpredictable ways. Every hour of the day, the museum looked a little different, as though it breathed with the city itself. When it opened, people traveled across continents just to stand before it. Many said it didn't look like a building at all. It looked like a dream made solid. Critics called it the most important building of its time. Local officials noticed something even more powerful. The museum revived the entire region. The Bilbao effect, as it became known, described how one breathtaking structure could change the economy, reputation, and spirit of a city. It proved that architecture wasn't only about shelter. It was about energy, community, and transformation. After Bilbao, Gehry's reputation rose to heights rarely seen in architecture. Commissions came from around the world. Cities wanted more than just a building. They wanted that emotional spark, that sense of wonder he was known for. In Los Angeles, he designed the Walt Disney Concert Hall, a building filled with sweeping silver curves that seemed to float above the street. Inside, the warm wood and perfect acoustics created a home for music that felt almost spiritual. Musicians often spoke of the feeling of playing inside a space that embraced sound so softly. One conductor once said, "It feels like the hall is listening with us." In Prague, he helped shape the dancing house, a playful pair of structures that leaned toward each other like partners in a gentle waltz. In Seattle, he created the fluid shell of the Museum of Pop Culture, a building That celebrated rhythm and movement in every line. From Chicago to Paris, from Las Vegas to Toronto, his work appeared like shimmering landmarks, each one different, each one unmistakably his. Yet, despite the worldwide fame, Gehry never acted like a celebrity. He spoke quietly, joked often, and treated design as a craft, rather than a performance. Friends said he worked with the same patience at 90 as he did at 30. He liked early mornings, simple drawings, and the joy of trying new shapes. Even his wildest designs began with humble piles of paper on a table. As years passed, he became a mentor to younger architects. His studios were places of experimentation, where students and designers were encouraged to break patterns and trust their instincts. He never forced anyone to follow his own style. Instead, he reminded them to follow their own voices. Find the line that makes you want to draw again. He once told a student. Those words stayed with many. The news of his passing brought a deep silence to the architecture world. Universities held special moments of reflection. Museums lowered their flags. In Bilbao, people gathered outside the museum that had changed their city, lighting candles along the water at dusk. A local resident spoke softly to a reporter. He didn't just build our museum, he helped build our hope. Even people who didn't know his name often recognized his work. His buildings were the ones tourists photographed without needing a caption. They were the structures that made childhood memories, honeymoon backdrops, and family photos shine a little brighter. His designs became symbols of movement, of the idea that life is always shifting, always unfolding. The core of Gehry's work came from his belief that art and architecture were not separate worlds. He saw them as companions, working together to bring comfort, beauty, and surprise. He often collaborated with artists, engineers, and musicians, finding inspiration in their rhythms and ideas. His famous cardboard furniture, made early in his career, showed that he was willing to explore even the simplest materials. To him, everything had potential. Throughout his life, Gehry faced criticism. Some said his buildings were too bold, too confusing, or too expensive. But he never argued back with harsh words. Instead, he let the experience of walking through his spaces speak for itself. Over time, many of his harshest critics became admirers, realizing that his designs carried a balance of courage and gentleness. His later years were filled with reflection, but also with creation. Even in his 90s, he drew plans for museums, homes, and public spaces. Age never dimmed his imagination. He often said that designing kept him alive, kept him curious, kept him connected to the world. His hands moved more slowly, but his ideas flowed as freely as ever. Frank Gehry's passing marked the end of a long life, but not the end of his influence. His buildings stand across continents, catching the morning light and holding stories of the people who enter them. Students who grew up studying his sketches now teach their own students. Cities that once struggled found new life through his vision. Families who walked through his concert halls still remember the soft echo of music inside those warm wooden curves. His impact goes beyond architecture. He taught people to question limitations. He showed that creativity does not fade with age, and that imagination can shape not only buildings, but entire communities. The world he left behind is filled with spaces that remind us to look up, to slow down, and to appreciate the strange beauty of curves, shadows, and reflections. A close colleague shared a final tribute after his passing. Frank didn't bend metal, he bent expectations. He reminded us that beauty is never a straight line. Another friend added, he turned cities into galleries. He made the world believe again in the power of design. Today, as people stand before his buildings from Bilbao to Los Angeles, they see more than steel, glass, or concrete. They see movement, they see imagination, and as the world says goodbye, one truth remains clear. Frank Gehry did not just design buildings, he gave them soul, and through them his spirit will continue to rise, curve, twist, and shine, reminding future generations that architecture at its heart is a form of dreaming. His journey ends, but the dreams he shaped will continue to guide us for generations to come. The news arrived quietly from London, a gentle announcement that felt heavier than the words themselves. Sir Tom Stoppard, one of the most respected playwrights of the modern age, passed away on November 29, 2025. His departure brought a soft silence to theaters, classrooms, and stages around the world. For many, it felt like losing a voice that had guided them through questions about life, identity, and the meaning hidden behind ordinary moments. Stoppard was known for mixing wit with wonder. His plays carried humor, but also a deep sense of searching. He explored big ideas, fate, truth, time, and memory without ever losing the warmth of human emotion. Audiences left his productions feeling both lighter and wiser, touched by the careful balance he brought to every line. From Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead to Arcadia, his work shaped how modern theater thinks, dreams, and speaks. Tributes began flowing in within hours of the announcement. One director shared he could take a simple moment and make it feel like a question for the whole universe, a family friend added. Tom never spoke down to anyone. He lifted people up with his kindness and his clarity. And on social media, a young playwright wrote, "He made me believe that stories can be both funny and profound at the same time." Tom Stoppard's journey began far from the bright lights of London. Born in 1937 in what is now the Czech Republic, he spent his early childhood moving from place to place during a time of global upheaval. His family eventually settled in England, where he grew up surrounded by a new language and a new world. These early shifts shaped him, planting seeds of curiosity about identity, belonging, and human resilience, questions that later breathed through his work. As a young man, Stoppard first worked as a journalist. He wrote quickly, learned fast, and developed an ear for sharp dialogue. But even then, something inside him leaned toward the stage. He began writing radio plays, testing ideas, exploring rhythms, and experimenting with how words changed when spoken aloud. These early works helped him understand the strange and delicate bond between actors and audiences. His breakthrough came in 1966, when Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead was first performed. The play offered a new way of looking at Shakespeare's world through the eyes of two minor characters, who suddenly found themselves at the center of a story they barely understood. With its clever humor and philosophical depth, the play surprised critics and thrilled audiences. It felt fresh, bold, and different. Stoppard had given theater a new voice. After that, his career grew steadily, but never rushed. He was patient with his craft, shaping each play with great care. Works like Jumpers, Travesties, and The Real Thing showed his ability to mix logic with emotion, comedy with sorrow, and language with music. His writing was known for its precision, but also for its humanity. Even his most intellectual characters carried soft edges. In the mid-body of his life's work, Stoppard reached another peak with Arcadia. This play, filled with mathematics, poetry, time shifts, and quiet longing, became one of the most admired works of modern theater. It moved gently between past and present, showing how lives can connect across centuries through shared ideas and unspoken hopes. Many critics called it his masterpiece. Audiences called it unforgettable. Despite his fame, Stoppard remained humble. Colleagues often spoke of his gentle nature, his curiosity, and his willingness to listen. He approached writing not as a performance, but as a form of discovery. He once said, "A play isn't finished when I write it, it's finished when an audience breathes with it." Those who worked with him knew he treated every rehearsal as a chance to learn. During the following decades, Stoppard continued to explore new themes. He wrote about politics, history, refugees, and the fragility of freedom. His plays, The Coast of Utopia and Leopoldstadt, carried stories of cultural identity and personal survival, stories shaped by the shadows of the past but filled with hope for the future. These works showed a deeper emotional layer, revealing a man who understood that life's joy often rises out of its hardest questions. When news of his passing spread across theater communities, many halls dimmed their lights in tribute. Actors shared memories from rehearsal rooms, describing how Stoppard encouraged them to trust the rhythm of language. One actor said, "He taught us that every pause has meaning. He made silence feel like part of the script." Students around the world reread his plays, discovering once again how he blended humor with heartbreak and intellect with innocence. In the center of these reflections, people also remembered his kindness. Stoppard's presence in rehearsal rooms was soft but steady. He spoke with respect for everyone from seasoned actors to first-time stagehands. He believed the theater was built by teams, not individuals. That belief shaped his legacy just as much as his writing. As the mid-body of Stoppard's story unfolds, the paragraphs shorten, slowing into a gentle rhythm. He often said that writing was a form of gratitude. He wrote to honor the people around him. He wrote to understand the world, and he wrote to bring comfort to those searching for meaning. His home life remained private, but those close to him described a man who loved conversation, books, and the quiet joy of shared meals. His family spoke of his warmth, his dry humor, and his ability to turn even simple moments into thoughtful reflections. One family member whispered, "Tom never needed the spotlight. He cared more about the people in the room." As Stoppard grew older, his writing became even more personal. Leopoldstadt, one of his final major works, examined the legacy of Jewish families in Europe. For Stoppard, who discovered his own family history later in life, the play held deep emotional weight. It explored memory, loss, and the small, powerful connections that tied generations together. Audiences felt his sincerity in every scene. His final years were marked by gratitude. He often spoke about the joy of watching new playwrights rise, bringing fresh voices to the stage. He celebrated younger artists, encouraged bold storytelling, and reminded people that the theater was always evolving. his generosity became a quiet foundation for many who looked up to him. Stoppard's passing left an empty space, but also a vast legacy. His plays are studied in schools, performed in major theaters, and cherished by anyone who has ever found comfort in words. He helped people question their own lives without feeling overwhelmed. He invited audiences to laugh, think, feel, and dream all within the same hour. Theaters around the world honored him in different ways. Some held readings of his scenes. Others played quiet recordings of actors performing lines from his most famous works. In London, outside one of the theaters that regularly showcased his plays, a fan left a small handwritten note. It simply said, "Thank you for making thought beautiful." As time passes, his words will continue to echo across stages. They will guide new actors, inspire new writers, and remind audiences that the search for truth is both noble and human. His plays invite people to sit with difficult ideas, but also to find hope inside them. Tom Stoppard did more than rewrite the stage. He gave humanity a new way to listen to stories, to history, and to each other. His influence can be felt in the structure of modern plays, in the courage of young writers, and in the quiet belief that theater can change how we see ourselves. His work remains a testament to the power of language. It shows that humor and depth can exist together, that questions can be more powerful than answers, and that stories shape our understanding of the world. His characters, caught between logic and emotion, continue to speak to people of all ages. In the end, Stoppard's legacy is found not only in the plays he wrote, but in the hearts he touched. He believed that art should reveal humanity's most honest moments, its fears, its joys, its memories, and its hopes, and through his writing, he achieved exactly that. As the world says goodbye, his stories remain on shelves, on stages, and in minds across generations. They stand like gentle lanterns, guiding people through the darker corners of life and reminding them that clarity and comfort can be found in the beauty of words. Sir Tom Stoppard leaves behind a world shaped by his imagination. His plays continue to shine with wit, music, and meaning, and as theater lights rise each night, they carry with them a piece of his spirit, quiet, thoughtful, and always reaching for truth. His journey ends, but his voice continues, and in that voice his legacy lives on, soft and everlasting. The news came quietly from the Ozarks, settling over the hills like a slow morning fog. Daniel Woodrell, the novelist who gave voice to a region often ignored by the wider world, passed away on November 28, 2025. His death marked the end of a storytelling presence that felt both fierce and tender, shaped by the land he loved and the people he understood so deeply. To readers across the globe, it felt like losing the voice that spoke for forgotten places and the lives lived inside them. Woodrell was best known for his country noir, a term that captured the raw honesty of his stories. His books carried grit, but also quiet beauty. They held pain, but also surprising warmth. From Winter's Bone to Tomato Red, his work showed how struggle and hope often stand side by side in rural America. He wrote about poverty, loyalty, family, and survival not from a distance, but from a place of deep knowing. In the hours after the news broke, tributes poured in from writers, filmmakers, readers, and residents of the Ozarks themselves. One writer said, "He didn't write about the Ozarks, he wrote from them." A longtime friend shared. Daniel saw dignity in places others dismissed. On social media, a fan posted, "His books made me feel the land in my bones. I'll never forget that." Daniel Woodrell's journey began in 1953 in Springfield, Missouri, but the Ozarks were always his true home. The rugged hills, deep forests, and quiet towns shaped his earliest experiences. He grew up watching the rhythms of rural life, its hardships, silence, humor, and resilience. These early memories did more than influence him. They rooted themselves into his writing, becoming the heart of his voice. As a young man, Woodrell joined the U.S. Marines, a path that gave him discipline but also sharpened his awareness of human behavior. When he later studied writing, he brought with him a clear sense of observation and a belief that every life, no matter how isolated or troubled, held meaning worth exploring. He did not chase fame or literary trends. Instead, he wrote stories that stayed close to the soil he knew. His early novels received praise, but remained somewhat under the radar. Still, he continued to write with patience, shaping characters who felt real people struggling against forces larger than themselves, yet refusing to surrender their pride or humanity. He once said, "I write about the kind of people who don't get written about." That single sentence captured the mission that guided him through the decades. Woodrell's breakthrough arrived with Winter's Bone, a novel that carried the rough cold of the Ozarks into pages that felt both heartbreaking and powerful. The story of Ree Dolly, a teenage girl searching for her missing father, resonated with readers far beyond Missouri. The book was adapted into an acclaimed film, bringing Woodrell's world to audiences around the globe. Yet, even as his fame grew, He remained humble, quiet, and deeply connected to his community. The mid-body of his life's work is best told in short, steady paragraphs, reflective, grounded, and close to the earth. He lived in the Ozarks by choice. He listened to people others overlooked. He wrote with respect, even when describing pain. His stories were honest, never cruel. Widgell's writing stood out because it refused to romanticize or judge. He showed life in its full range: dark, bright, harsh, and tender. He believed that truth carried beauty, even when wrapped in hardship. His characters fought, fell, rose again, and sometimes failed, yet he treated each of them with compassion. Friends remembered him as quiet but sharp-minded. He enjoyed simple conversations, long drives through the hills, and the feeling of being at home in a place where the land itself seemed to breathe old stories. One close friend remarked, "Daniel never pretended to be something he wasn't. That's why people trusted him." Readers trusted him too. His novels, though often centered on crime, were never simply about mystery. They were about the weight of circumstances, the kind that shaped families for generations. He wrote with a lyrical voice, but always with clarity. He understood that the Ozarks were more than a backdrop. They were a living presence, shaping the souls of the people who lived there. In the years after Winter's Bone, Widgell continued to create work that felt rooted and alive. The Outlaw album, The Maid's Version, and other later books showed his evolving interest in the layers of memory that surround rural life. He often said that stories grow like the land, slowly, quietly, and with deep roots. As the news of his passing settled, residents of the region reflected on what he meant to them. Some said he helped the world understand the Ozarks beyond cliches. Others said he captured the spirit of people who rarely appeared in books. A local librarian shared, "He didn't make us look perfect, but he made us look human in schools and community centers." His books were read not for glamour but for truth. Teachers used his stories to show students how literature can reveal real lives, not just imagined worlds. Young writers looked to him for courage to write honestly, even when honesty hurts. Midway through this remembrance, the story moves into its softer pacing. He wrote slowly, but with purpose. He cared more about depth than speed. He shaped each sentence with careful attention. His books felt like they belonged to the land. Widgell's connection to the Ozarks was not just personal, it became part of the region's identity. He gave it a literary voice at a time when many rural areas felt forgotten by mainstream culture. His influence stretched past literature, touching film, journalism, and regional storytelling. The film adaptation of Winter's Bone introduced a new generation to his world. The movie's success brought attention to the communities he wrote about, showing them with honesty and respect. Yet, even with newfound recognition, Widgell stayed grounded. Fame never changed his quiet way of life. Friends described him as generous, especially to younger writers seeking advice. He encouraged them not to chase trends, but to trust their experiences. Write what you know, but write what you care about, he often told them. That advice became a guiding principle for many who admired him. As he grew older, Widgell suffered health challenges, some related to past injuries. Even then, he continued writing slower, but with the same sharp insight and emotional depth. His later interviews carried a reflective tone, filled with gratitude for the readers who supported him in the place that shaped his career. His death brought a tender kind of mourning, especially within the Ozarks. Many felt they had lost not only a writer, but a witness, someone who understood the weight of their stories and had carried them with dignity. Bookstores across the region created small displays of his work. At one shop in West Plains, a handwritten sign read, "He told our stories, we'll keep telling his." On social media, readers posted photos of their worn copies, sharing how his words helped them feel seen. Though he never sought to be a national figure, Daniel Widgell became one through the quiet force of his talent. His stories traveled far because they were true, emotionally true, regionally true, and humanly true. His legacy now rests in the voices of writers who follow in his footsteps. Many cite him as a mentor they never met, an artist who showed them that literature can emerge from places rarely shown on maps. His influence can be heard in novels, essays, and films that seek to capture rural life with depth instead of stereotype. He proved that small places hold big stories. He proved that hardship does not erase beauty. He proved that literature belongs to everyone. His work carries those truths forward. In reflecting on his life, one thing becomes clear: Daniel Widgell wrote with empathy. He understood that even the hardest lives contain moments of grace. His stories did not soften reality, but they honored the people who live within it. His books continue to echo with themes of resilience, loyalty, and the unspoken ties that hold communities together. They remind readers that strength often grows in quiet places, far from the spotlight. As the chapter draws toward its final notes, the tribute turns gentle. He gave the Ozarks a voice that traveled the world. His stories carried the heartbeat of the hills, and his words continue to rise like morning light across the land he loved. Today, as readers open his novels again, they hear the echoes of a storyteller who understood the power of simple truths. His characters, flawed, brave, wounded, and determined, live on in the minds of those who met them. They continue to speak long after their creator is gone. Daniel Woodrow leaves behind more than books. He leaves behind a sense of connection, a reminder that every region has stories worth telling, and that every life holds depth worthy of understanding. His work stands as a bridge between the Ozarks and the world, built with compassion and crafted with care. His journey ends, but the voice he gave to his homeland remains strong, steady, and unforgettable, and through that voice his legacy continues, quiet, honest, and everlasting. A quiet sadness settled across the golf world this morning, as news of Frank "Fuzzy" Zoller's passing was confirmed. He was a man known for his smile before his swing. His presence brought an easy warmth to a sport often marked by pressure, silence, and strict tradition. And yet, even in those traditions, he found room for humor, for kindness, and for a lightness that fans never forgot. Frank Zoller died on November 27, 2025. He was 74. The announcement came from his family early in the day, shared with simple, gentle words that carried both love and grief. It was a kind of message that reflected the man himself, soft, understated, and honest. His family described him as our heart, our laugh, and the spirit who made even the hardest days feel easier for many people. He wasn't just a golfer. He was a memory, a moment, a voice that made people believe that sports could be joyful, even under bright lights and heavy pressure. Frank Zoller was born on November 11, 1951, in New Albany, Indiana. He grew up around friends, cousins, and neighbors who knew him as a boy who couldn't stay indoors for long. He had a competitive streak, but it was mixed with a good sense of humor. People around him said he could turn almost any challenge into a game. He loved playing sports of all kinds, yet baseball and golf were the two that stayed with him the most. Golf came naturally to him, but never in a simple way. It was the long afternoons at local courses, the smell of cut grass, and the calm that could only come from being alone with a ball, a club, and a wide space. His father encouraged him, telling him that golf wasn't just a game, it was character, discipline, and patience. Those lessons stayed with him his entire life. By the time he reached college, he had already shown a strong competitive spirit. He played at the University of Houston, where he met teammates who would later describe him as the funniest man to ever take the sport seriously. Even during tense college tournaments, Frank found a way to make everyone laugh. Some remembered him cracking jokes minutes before teeing off. Others said he was the one who made nervous rookies feel like they belonged. This mix of talent and warmth became the trademark that followed him into the professional world. He joined the PGA Tour in 1975, stepping into a field filled with legends and rising stars. The pressure was heavy, but he didn't show it. Instead, he treated every tournament with the same energy he had as a boy in Indiana, joyful, open-hearted, and ready for whatever came next. Then came the year 1979, a year that would mark him forever. It was his first appearance at the Masters tournament. Most players dream of simply making the cut on their first try. Few imagine winning, and almost no one actually does it. But Frank Zoller did. He played with calm confidence, stepping through Augusta National with a steady swing and a smile that became impossible to forget. In the final round, he climbed the leaderboard, catching the attention of fans who sensed something rare happening. When he won, he became only the third golfer in history to win the Masters on his first attempt. It was one of the sport's great stories, the kind of moment that seemed almost unreal. Commentators praised him, fans celebrated him, and many said the same thing. He made it look easy, but he made it feel even easier. That victory changed the direction of his life. It lifted him from a strong professional player to a widely admired figure in golf. But unlike many who rise quickly, he stayed grounded. He seemed more shocked by the attention than anyone else. He laughed about it, joked with reporters, and thanked every person who approached him. Short, steady paragraphs follow here. He continued building his career through the 1980s, winning fans with both his skill and his personality. In 1984, he added another major championship to his name when he won the U.S. Open at Winged Foot. It was a demanding course, but Frank played with a blend of control and creativity that impressed even his toughest critics. That win confirmed him not only as a talented golfer, but as one of the strongest competitors of his era. People around him often said that he played from the heart. His swing was smooth, but his passion was even smoother. He read courses with a mix of instinct and experience, and when things went wrong, when his ball drifted or bounced in the wrong direction, he handled it with a sense of humor that made him stand out. He didn't slam his clubs or shout in anger. Instead, he sometimes offered a quiet laugh or a small shrug as if to say, "That's golf." Many young players admired him because he treated everyone the same. Whether a rookie or a veteran, he was never arrogant. He shared advice easily, joked with younger teammates, and gave simple reminders that the game didn't control a person's life, it only challenged it. As the years passed, Frank "Fuzzy" Zoller became more than a champion. He became a familiar presence in American sports. His personality made him welcome at charity events, television interviews, and invitational tournaments. He used his name to support junior golf programs and community groups. People often saw him giving time to causes that rarely made headlines. In the mid-body section, using short to two-sentence paragraphs, his humor remained his trademark. Fans loved the way he teased himself, poked fun at the game, and lightened tense moments. Even at tournaments where young players were struggling, he would find a way to make them laugh. Some said their first memory of him wasn't watching him play, it was watching him talk. His interviews were simple, warm, and always real. His private life, though quieter, was filled with deep connections. He loved spending time with his children and grandchildren. Friends say that he was happiest when surrounded by family, with a simple meal on the table and stories filling the room. A family friend shared a tribute online saying, "He never walked into a room without bringing sunshine with him." His wife once said in an interview, "Fuzzy loved people. That was his real gift. Golf was only the way he met the world." His impact spread beyond the tournament fields. In local communities, people remembered how he visited children's hospitals and youth sports programs. Without cameras or publicity, he believed that small acts mattered. He believed that kindness, in its simplest form, was part of being human. As he aged, he continued appearing at events, signing autographs, and offering his time generously. His hair turned whiter, but his spirit never quieted. He carried the same laugh, the same sparkle in his eyes, and the same rhythm in his voice. Even in retirement, he remained part of golf's story. Broadcasters talked about his early career. Fans shared videos of his famous Masters victory. Younger players respected him as a symbol of sportsmanship, someone who showed that greatness could be gentle. His death brings sadness, but also deep gratitude from those who admired him. One of his former competitors said in a public tribute, "He made the sport better, not just by winning, but by showing us how to carry ourselves." Another tribute came from a young golfer on social media, who wrote, "I never met him, but I learned from him. You could watch him and see not just skill, but heart. That's the kind of player I want to be." As the day went on, the stories grew more personal. Fans shared memories of meeting him at tournaments, describing how he smiled at every handshake. Others remembered him signing hats, golf balls, even napkins with no rush or frustration. Some said he joked with them as if they were longtime friends. It was these gestures, small but genuine, that shaped his image as a man who cared. There were more difficult moments in his life, as all lives have. But through these, he remained steady. He learned, he reflected, and he tried always to move forward with dignity. People respected him not only for his victories, but for the honesty with which he lived. Toward the end of his life, he spent more time away from public events. He focused on family, on quiet days at home, and on the memories that made him smile. Those who visited him said he remained gentle, patient, and thoughtful. His laughter, though softer, never left him. When his family announced his passing, the message was simple, reading in part, "He lived with joy and left with peace." Those words spoke to the life he created, a life built not on titles alone, but on the warmth he offered those around him. Golf clubs across the country lowered their flags in tribute. Fans posted photos from decades of tournaments. Some shared grainy pictures from the 1980s, showing a young Zoller swinging with confidence. Others shared more recent images, where his smile, older but still bright, reminded people of a steady light he carried from youth to old age. Commentators reflected on his Masters victory, calling it one of the most joyful wins in golf history. They talked about his U.S. Open triumph, remembering how he pushed through tough conditions with calm focus. But most of all, they talked about his humanity, the kindness that never faded through success or struggle. He is remembered as one of the few players who could win at the highest level, laugh through the hardest tests, and still make strangers feel like friends. His legacy now rests in the stories shared across generations. Older fans might recall the thrill of watching him rise. Younger fans may learn about him through videos and documentaries, but each person who hears his story will likely feel the same thing, a sense of comfort, as if meeting someone who understood both competition and compassion.